So the TCT Georgia team will walk you through a little introduction to OpenStreetMap. So a quick reminder, if you haven't already created an account, this would be a great time to do so. And they'll share what we're working on and our priorities. And we'll also get to hear from the team at Cartizan about how they use OpenStreetMap in their work. So we're really excited that so many of you are joining today and interested in helping out, because it means that even, if each of you just did an hour or two of mapping, we could make a huge amount of progress together in a really short time. And that would have super useful implications for Georgia more broadly, as well as other TCT projects moving forward. So we're really grateful to any time you can contribute. We appreciate you being here. And as a side note, we are also raising funds to support strategic projects this summer, trail building, scouting, and mapping, all things that we can complete while the rest of the world is on some form of lockdown. We are on the Caucasus as well, but have a lot of flexibility to move around at the moment. And many of you who attended our last Campfire did already donate. We are so grateful for and excited by the contributions we already, have already received. So thank you. If you are interested in donating any amounts, or even just interested in helping us spread the word, we really appreciate it. So I'll drop the link in the chat. And that's it for the intro. So without further ado, let's Paul.
Yeah, and just to mention, sorry, Megan, sorry for talking to you, but just to mention, yeah, we're recording this. So, some people expressed interest in sharing it. Some people couldn't attend, and so they were hoping to get involved afterwards. And so we're going to share this recording with folks, and they can see how we're using like that spreadsheet I shared to map the villages in Georgia, and help us out later on this week and in the months to come.
Yeah. So if you hear of anyone else who might be interested, feel free to pass on the recording and the spreadsheet. As we continue to make progress, we'll continue adding things that we can all work on. So hopefully with, a mighty force like this, it'll actually go pretty fast. So Sopo, are you online? And can you give us a little bit of an introduction to OpenStreetMap?
I sure can, Megan. How's my sound, first of all?
It's good, yeah.
Okay, good. Okay, well, I'm just going to assume that majority of people today are not familiar with OpenStreetMap, and I'm just going to briefly go over what it is and how we use it. OpenStreetMap is basically a free map of the world, editable map, it's pretty similar to Wikipedia. In fact, it was inspired by this concept and the growing success of Wikipedia back in 2004 when it was created. Basically, it allows its users to view, add, edit, and use the map data anywhere in the world for free. And it creates, the process of creating map data is pretty simple and manual, actually. Users create map data using surveys, like manual surveys or GPS devices or aerial photography, or any like open source that's available at that at the moment, right? Users can collect, usually like the way we collect the data for maps, for creating OpenStreetMaps back in the day, was using GPS devices. Like we'd use our GPSs, like we'd have the GPSs on, and like we'd drive a car or like ride a bike around the villages, and then like transfer that data to this software that OSM created, and it's also like free and open source for everybody. But that's not true for the areas that are already traced from the satellite imagery. And this part, tracing data from satellite imagery, is actually where our time sitting home can be put to a great use. And that's how we're actually mapping or improving maps today. But we'll go over the technical details a bit later. But the way the idea of open source information, open source data, has been like hugely successful in so many areas in the world, and it helped so many projects around the world. Well, one of them is actually the data that used it, that found its great use was for humanitarian purposes back in 2010, when this catastrophic earthquake hit Haiti.
Mm-hmm.
That was actually when OpenStreetMap volunteers, OpenStreetMap organization, and the crisis volunteers mapped the entire Port-au-Prince in just 2 days. And just because the process of creating maps is just so flexible, that it actually found its great use among the organizations like World Bank and Red Cross and UN, and they're using the data to better address their first response operations in the disastrous areas. Yeah.
Right. So places would know, be able to access, figure out where to deliver supplies, that kind of thing. Where
exactly.
People
Yeah.
mm-hmm.
Yeah. Because the process of creating it, it's just so fast and so detailed and precise. It goes really fast, and then so that can be used by the huge organizations for targeting the areas to help. It's not just earthquakes or natural disasters like that. It's also been used for mapping crises like epidemics, like Ebola outbreak in 2014 was mapped by HOT OSM, which is humanitarian OSM team. And even today, COVID crisis is still being mapped by OSM team around the world. And so the data that is out there on OSM is it's being pulled by huge organizations, and the companies like Facebook and Foursquare and Napsy and Apple also, and the applications that we have on our phones, outdoor navigation applications, they use maps, they pull maps from OSM, and so basically making the detailed data on OSM contributes to having more efficient and more detailed and precise data on our devices as well. Those maps can be used, again, like I said, it's free for everybody to use, and maybe printed maps or their applications or whatever. And so that's also what we've been using at TCT to make maps. Yeah, and this is why having the basis of volunteers improving Georgian data is very important for TCT as well.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Yeah, so it can definitely play a role in helping address crises, and also a role in preventing crises like people getting lost in the mountains. Very yeah, thank you, Sobo. Super helpful. And as we said earlier, feel free to send in any questions you guys may have.
Yeah, for sure. I'm pretty sure I missed so many points, but I'm here to answer questions.
Great. Yeah. So yeah, speaking of OpenStreetMap data and beautiful paper maps, Alessandro and Simon, would you mind turning on your video? So today, like I said, we're really excited to have the two of the co-founders of Cartizan, Alessandro and Simon, here with us. So guys, thank you so much for joining. For those who don't know, Cartizan is a longtime partner at the TCT. They've been working incredibly hard over the past couple of years to create the first 1 to 25,000 scale topo maps of hiking areas in Armenia, which is something that didn't exist at all before. And yeah, it's been an incredible resource for navigation of all the trails, as well as, cultural historic sites that they've helped make accessible. Got the Diligent map here. Can you guys see me? I feel like my computer froze. Oh, great. Oh, hi guys. Got my map too.
Okay.
Yeah.
Nice.
Thank you so much for joining. Could you guys, I don't know if I cut out there, but we really appreciate having you here. Would you mind telling us a little bit about Cartizan and how you use OpenStreetMap during your own process?
Yes, of course. Hi again. Hi, everyone. I think let's start a little bit with a little bit of context. In fact, Cartizan is a spin-off, basically, of TCT, because I was on board of the expedition, like, kind of exploring the southern route in Armenia, and that's when the idea came into being. Like, okay, well, there are no topo maps. We are collecting data. What can we do with this? And thanks to Jeff and Georgia, we got an introduction to this world of open mapping, and then that's when the opportunity sort of manifested itself. And Simon actually did his university internship with TCT and me working on this basically developing the process that we are now going to briefly go through, and which became our workflow, literally. Again, first of all, a little parenthesis, like, why does OSM matter so much when it comes to outdoor mapping is because where there is no commercial interest, and usually high in the mountains or highlands in remote areas in the wilderness, there isn't that much of a business interest. The maps are really, really not good. The famous one, let's say, the Google Maps of the world, they are just empty. So that's why all of the apps that Sopo was mentioning heavily rely on OSM, because that's where the information is. And the great thing is that you can contribute with very granular and specific knowledge. So it's a necessity, and it's great that we can use it, not just to upload, but also then to use for our own purposes afterwards. So briefly, kind of how it works, like there is two aspects of the world. There is the field mapping and the remote mapping. The remote mapping is what you can all do from your computer and just looking at satellite images and draw things from the maps. And the field mapping is actually what Sopo was describing, going out with your phones and collecting nodes, georeference nodes, and all that wealth of information which we have. We can share like, the details of how we do it and what we want to map and how, come back to us, and then we sort of, whatever is public domain goes straight into OSM, which means public domain information is immediately given away to everyone. And then there is the trail designers that need specific info that goes into their databases, and they use it to manage their projects and all of that stuff. And this has been kind of what we've been working on a lot with all the scouts down in Armenia. And we have
Alessandro.
kilometers and kilometers. Yeah.
Can I interrupt you for 1 second? Some people are having trouble hearing you, so if you can just hold the mic, maybe like right in front of your mouth, or see if the sound's a little bit better, because people are having trouble saying it's choppy and quiet.
I don't know if it's the internet here. Fine. Yeah, I don't know if I need to.
Better. Yeah, thank you.
So basically, the information that is of public domain goes into OSM immediately, and we have written guides and refined those guides so that we can help people to collect relevant data specific for trail mapping. And then what's fun actually for us as a company now is what we can do with the data afterwards, which is what Simon can tell us now.
Yep. Hey, everyone. Exactly. So as Alessandro was saying, I joined TCT as an intern, and we were processing all the scouting data that was coming in from the fields and putting it directly back on OSM. And then had the idea of using this data to create topographic hiking maps, because we thought that is something that people also need, not just to have the data on their apps, but to also have good old topographic hiking maps. And this data, so then we kind of, both of us have never done this before, so it was a learning process for us to slowly find out how to make these maps and collect many different data sources. So everything that we could find, we collected, mapped, put on OSM, and then downloaded and used for our maps. That includes old Soviet maps that we found that we could digitize. And now we're also using more and more drone imagery that the TCT Armenia is using lots of drones. And those imagery we can add directly into as a back layer into the OSM apps we're using to create the data. So that's really great for everyone, for us for the maps, and for everyone else who's using the data. And yeah, Alessandro, maybe you can show how the finished product looks like.
Yeah. So yeah, as Megan was
So
showing, you probably have seen this.
then the data we get from OSM is kind of our base data, base map that then we style to make into a hopefully pleasing topographic map and add hill shades and contour lines and so on. Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah, and we have two of those maps. Two of those maps are actually ready and available. We have a third one in the making, and of course, the elephant in the room is that Georgia is not currently served, which is interesting to know that there is a community reactivated right now. And for those of you who are interested, know that we do want to start in Georgia as well. We are in fact looking for people on the ground up there that could be interested in connecting with us. And if you do want, I can drop an email in the chat, and we are happy to help anyway if you want to learn how to map. And if you want to get involved further, there are ways. In fact, currently we have students that do this work of remote mapping from home. And we are in fact, we fundraise to actually pay them to help us, because we are just two and there is so much data to map. So, there are opportunities there, and if you're interested, just get in touch.
Fantastic. Thank you guys so much. Really interesting to hear about the process, and just incredible to hear that, all of this has been a learning process over the past couple of years, because I mean, these maps are hands down the best topographic maps that exist in the Caucasus. They are just gorgeous and so useful. Personally kept me from getting very lost in Dilijan last fall, so thank you. And we certainly hope that we'll be able to see some of your work up in Georgia at some point. So, yeah.
Thank you guys so much. Thank you guys.
Our
so
pleasure.
the idea that we want to kind of reiterate to everybody here is that you can be a participant in this mapping community, and when you make edits to the map, it makes a big difference. Improving the base map contributes to all sorts of things that helps the general hiking community and helps the villages along the trail. So when we add a village, draw the buildings in the village, business owners can add their guest houses, cafes can mark themselves as a cafe so hikers can find it. And all of this feeds into printed maps that we're using on TCT website. We make PDF maps for Georgia and some of the other sections, and then to the Cartizan maps as well. So it's very meaningful. And we want to show you guys how you can make edits. So basically what I'm going to do is just walk through the walkthrough on OpenStreetMap, and everybody can just follow along. And, maybe it's a little bit, basic. I'm sure everybody has, can follow along in the walkthrough, but I think it's helpful if anybody has any questions as we're going through. You can ask us, you can ask, Alessandro and Simon, if you have any questions. So I'm just going to do a screen share and guide everyone through the walkthrough. And if you have questions, ask them in the chat. And after we're done with the walkthrough, we'll talk about Georgia specific mapping and answer questions in kind of an open forum. So, so I'm gonna go to OpenStreetMap, which we shared with everyone, and that the address is openstreetmap.org. So here I am in OpenStreetMap. Give me a thumbs up, Megan, if we're looking at the right thing. Okay, here. So I'm already signed in. So if you're not signed in, you can sign in. I'm going to go to edit here in the top left-hand corner. It's telling me to zoom in to edit. So once I zoom in enough, then I can go to the edit function. And this is a web browser-based editing platform. So you don't have to download anything for this particular type of editing. So if it's the first time that you've started in OpenStreetMap, you'll be invited to do the walkthrough. If you've already logged in and you've already clicked on the edit button, you need to go down to the help button down here in the corner, the little question mark, and then just click on start the walkthrough. So I'll give everybody a little bit of time to get the walkthrough open. You should have the screen in front of you where it says welcome. This walkthrough will teach you the basics of editing in OpenStreetMap. All right, so I'm going to click on OK there. So this is just a practice session. None of this things that we do are going to be saved in OpenStreetMap. So, you know, it's good for experimentation and testing out all these different functions. So nothing's going to be saved. Clicking on OK. We're going to introduce a few new words. Those will be highlighted in italics. Clicking on OK. This type of editing is a lot easier to do with the mouse, but you can do it with a touchpad. So it's just going to ask you to practice left clicking 5 times, which on most touchpads is just clicking 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And then right clicking on most touchpads is control clicking. So you can test that 5 times. And it'll take you to the next step. So I'm just going to give everybody a minute to get through the welcome there and practice using your touchpad or your mouse. I'm clicking on navigation here, the next step. So we have all this data. The data is the colored lines and shapes, this orange and white lines, the red squares, the different points with labels. And that's obviously overlaid onto satellite imagery here. You can move this map when you see the hand, you can move it, drag it around to move it. You can practice using the plus and minus keys to zoom in and zoom out. You can also, on your touchpad, do the touchscreen type movement with your fingers if that works. So features means anything on the map. When we use the term features, that means anything that we add to the OpenStreetMap. The 3 types of features that we have are points, lines, and areas. Clicking OK. In OpenStreetMap, sometimes points are called nodes and lines are sometimes called ways. Clicking OK. So if you click on one of these features, you can select it and it'll glow red like that. And that means you have it selected for editing. When you have the feature selected, then you get a table over here on the left side, the feature editor. So that's where you can make different changes to the feature. So the top part of the editor is showing what the feature is. It's a town hall. And the middle part is showing different fields or attributes. So that can be all kinds of information. Sometimes on the Georgia map and the Armenia map, you'll see different languages for different names. A lot of data can be stored in this features, in these fields in the feature editor. You can close the feature editor here by hitting the X up here. And you can search for features. So I'm going to search for Spring Street, which is what the walkthrough is asking me to do. And then I see it's a residential road, and I can click on it. And now Spring Street is selected. So hopefully everybody's following along with that. So the fields for the street are different than the one for the town hall. So like I said, you can keep all kinds of information here in the fields, whether the road is paved or not, whether it's one way, what the speed limit is, etc. So it's going to be different for the type of feature that we select and label it as. I'm going to click the X button. All right, so I'll give everybody a minute to just get through the navigation there if you're following along. All right, so I'm going to move on to points. I'm going to click OK and move on to points. So points can be used to represent features like shops, restaurants, monuments. They're for a specific location. We can go to the top of the editor here and we can select point. And then we're going to be able to make a point with our cursor. So I'm moving it over this building, and then I'm clicking with my cursor to make a point on the building there. Here in the walkthrough, they want us to label this a cafe. And obviously we would only label it a cafe if we knew that it was a cafe. So if we were in the real world, we would know that this is a cafe, and we would search for cafe, select cafe. And now we have all the different fields for cafe. So all of these fields are optional. And really, the type of remote mapping that we're going to be doing, we're not going to be filling in a lot of the fields, because in general, you're going to save those for the field mapping. But it's still really helpful to do the work of the remote mapping before you do the field mapping. So when we go out to do the field mapping, we can add in a lot of this additional information. So if we knew the name of the cafe, we were out field mapping, we could label it Joe's Cafe, because we know that. And then we would hit enter and we would label that Joe's Cafe. So we don't want to add information that we don't know, but this is just practice. So if Joe's Cafe was already labeled, somebody could come and say, that's not Joe's Cafe, and they could change the name of that cafe. Or if it changed ownership, it could be Bob's Cafe. So I'm just going to make it Bob's Cafe. And then we hit enter, and we've edited that building's field. So if you right click on any point, you're going to see it. It's going to show you the edit menu. I right clicked, so I did control click on my touchpad, and now it shows me I can delete the feature. So if you make a mistake, you can always delete it. And you can always do undo in the top right corner with the undo button. So I undo that, and then it's back. Bob's Cafe is back. So yeah, once again, I'm going to move on to points. I'm going to click OK and move on to points. So points can be used to represent features like shops, restaurants, monuments. They're for a specific location. We can go to the top of the editor here and we can select point. And then we're going to be able to make a point with our cursor. So I'm moving it over this building, and then I'm clicking with my cursor to make a point on the building there. Here in the walkthrough, they want us to label this a cafe. And obviously we would only label it a cafe if we knew that it was a cafe. So if we were in the real world, we would know that this is a cafe, and we would search for cafe, select cafe. And now we have all the different fields for cafe. So all of these fields are optional. And really, the type of remote mapping that we're going to be doing, we're not going to be filling in a lot of the fields, because in general, you're going to save those for the field mapping. But it's still really helpful to do the work of the remote mapping before you do the field mapping. So when we go out to do the field mapping, we can add in a lot of this additional information. So if we knew the name of the cafe, we were out field mapping, we could label it Joe's Cafe, because we know that. And then we would hit enter, and we would label that Joe's Cafe. So we don't want to add information that we don't know, but this is just practice. So if Joe's Cafe was already labeled, somebody could come and say, that's not Joe's Cafe, and they could change the name of that cafe. Or if it changed ownership, it could be Bob's Cafe. So I'm just gonna make it Bob's Cafe. And then we hit enter, and we've edited that building's field. So if you right click on any point, you're gonna see it. It's gonna show you the edit menu. I right clicked, so I did control click on my touchpad, and now it shows me I can delete the feature. So if you make a mistake, you can always delete it. And you can always do undo in the top right corner with the undo button. So I undo that, and then it's back. Bob's Cafe is back. So yeah, once again, just give everybody a few minutes to get through the points section, and then we'll move on to areas.
And as most of you probably saw already, Alessandra dropped a couple map comparisons in the chat box, which are super cool and a great visual to show what a difference, just adding simple things like this can make. So I would highly recommend checking those out when you have a minute. Pretty striking.
All right, I'm going to click on OK and move on to the areas. So areas are used to show the boundaries of features like lakes, buildings, residential areas. It can also be used for more detailed mapping of features, as you might normally map as points. So we're going to use this mostly for things like buildings, forests, lakes, etc., that are significant to our work on the trail. So we select area up here at the top in the middle of our edit window. And it wants us to edit this playground here. So I'm going to click, left click, and then start drawing the boundary of this playground as accurately as I can on the satellite imagery. It also said I could, hold Option so that I make sure that it doesn't connect with this other line over here. So that's an important point. Oops. And then, sorry, my internet's a little bit slow, so it's my drawing is not the best there, but so I'm gonna select playground, search for playground, sorry, and make that a playground. and it's showing us an example of the add field. So I'm going to add a field to this, and I'm going to say dogs. Sorry, I wanted me to add a description. So there we go. Adding a description. All right, so you can play around with that, play around with adding areas. We're gonna use that function a lot in the mapping that we're doing in Georgia. So, all right, so I'm gonna select lines here at the bottom. We use lines for roads, railroads, rivers, etc. So click on line. There's a road that's missing here. So I'm going to start making a line at the end of the road here and have it intersect with Flower Street. I can use my arrow buttons to move down the map as I complete this road. Then I'm going to finish it there by clicking again on the last line. It wants me to label this a minor road and label it a residential road. So we're just going to give this road a name, call it Elm Street. All right, now we can learn how to update the shape of the line. So this road is not accurately lined up with the satellite imagery. I selected the line. We can move the nodes. The nodes are the points on the line here. So I move that over to correct the intersection there. The arrows in between the nodes are midpoints. We can create a new node there to make this line even more accurate here. All right, when you're happy with that line, click OK. If there's a road that doesn't exist, it's all right to delete a line that you don't need. So here is a line that doesn't exist on the satellite imagery. So we're going to right click on the intersection node and click on the scissors to split it. If we select the top part of Washington Street here and shift click on 12th Avenue, we have the whole thing And we can right click and delete there with the trash can. All right. OpenStreetMap is the world's largest database of buildings. Very impressive. We're going to add even more in Georgia. There's a lot of missing buildings in Georgia. So we're going to click on the area button. We can add this house by tracing the outline. So I'm going to add these nodes like I did earlier for the playground to create an area following roughly the outline of the house in the satellite imagery. So I double clicked on the last node there. It wants me to try again. So
your corners.
I failed. If anybody else fails at this, don't feel bad about it. I don't know what it wants me to do with this awning here.
Looks satisfactory.
Yep. So we're going to select house for this one. If we know it's a house. We can right click and look at the edit menu here. And I can square the corners. This will be really useful for people when we're drawing buildings. You can square the corners. You can also just press the Q button. And then that makes it a nice, even right-angled building. We can do the same thing with this round water tank. You guys can practice this. Draw a rough outline of the water tank. Search for storage tank. Done with the features editor. And if we right click, we can make this a circle there. All right, so then you guys can practice. Hopefully everybody made it through the walkthrough. Now you're ready to edit in OpenStreetMap. And we can show you what we need help with in Georgia.
Thanks, Paul.
Yeah.
Congratulations on everyone for becoming an OpenStreetMap user. Very exciting. So, do folks want a minute, or we can go ahead and jump onto Georgia. So
Yeah, we're good. All right. Well, so I'm just going to introduce Georgia really quickly. I sent everybody a link to a spreadsheet that we're going to use to track the villages that are being mapped. So you all have access to this spreadsheet. And basically what we want to prioritize right now is buildings and roads in these villages. And these are villages that are within roughly 5 kilometers of the trail. So it'll be very useful to the maps that we have. Or they're on the edges of the protected areas. So they're access villages at the trailhead. So if we can use the remote mapping and the power of a larger community to get all the buildings mapped in this, in these villages that we're going to continue adding to the spreadsheet, it'll be a huge amount of work. that we don't have to do out in the field, and then we can spend our time in the field adding more detailed information. So now Vajo, one of our team members in Georgia, is gonna kind of show how we can use this spreadsheet to find a village and then what we're gonna map in the villages.
Thank you, Paul. First of all, thank you everyone for coming and being so supportive to TCT. I'm really thankful. And yeah, we're gonna go to the OpenStreetMaps now and show you guys how we do it. And first of all, we have this spreadsheet here, and there, oh, sorry. Oh, okay. There are the color schemes which correspond to current progress. Like yellow is currently mapping, the green is mapped already, and the blue ones are the ones that need mapping. So I wanted to showcase the village like Almaty, which is like partly mapped, but still needs mapping. So here I'll copy the name of the village, then go to the OpenStreetMaps and just paste it there and go to the search. And as you guys can see, there's the result. And
Can you share your screen so people can follow along with you?
Oh, sorry.
No, it's cool.
I'm so sorry. I just, okay.
Then people can see your view of Georgia.
Okay,
Perfect.
I'll
Awesome.
start over.
No,
My
that's
apologies.
yeah, people.
Okay, so the spreadsheet is here, and the village which we're gonna map is village like Almaty, and we're gonna copy it and paste in a search, then hit the search bar button, and then we see the result. And there's our village, and as you can see on the map, it's the blank space. You can't see anything there. But when we go to the edit button, it takes a while. So here we are. This is the village like Almaty, and there you can see the buildings, the river, roads, and this is why we're trying to map this villages, because not to have the blank spaces anymore on the map and have actual data of the villages that are there and will be helpful for TCT and for people who want to hike TCT. So for example, let's take this building, which is right here. We go to the area option. We can also use the shortcut 3, and we press the area option, and then it brings this cross, and we put the point as accurate as we can. And then when you're done with the points, you just double click it and it saves the shape. You can also improve the shape of the polygon with, the area, right click it and then go to the square. And when you press it, it makes it more square. You can also use the hotkey, the Q, and it's the same thing. And after, in the search bar, we need the description of the area that we just made. So in this case, we need the building. You can already see in the suggestions, but for the showcase, we type down building. And there you are, building. Now we just press the check mark and it has been saved, but not yet. Also, I noticed here that the part of the road is missing, and you can see pretty obviously the outline which goes all the way here, and we could connect it. Also, this is a little bit off from the actual road, so we can make it nice and accurate. And when we want to connect the existing roads where they don't have the connection, you go to the last point and press the right button on the mouse, and then you press this continue. And then you just go and outline nicely the shapes of the road. And then you're done. Double click it, and now it's saved. So there's already the tag of the actual road. It says territory road. So in this case, we're going to just leave it like that. And then when we want to save it, we go here to this button. We click it once, and then we just put the description what we've done there. So in this case, we mapped the building and the road. After you're done with the description, you can check the I would like someone to review my edits if you'd like to. And after that, you just press upload, and it's going to be saved on the database of OpenStreetMaps. And after a while, it's going to be projected on the actual map. So yeah, that's pretty much it. And we already made list of the villages. There's a lot of the villages that need editing, mapping. So your help would be really crucial in this thing, and really hope for your help. Thank you guys, and sorry for the weird screen sharing.
Thank you so much, Baha. Totally fine. Appreciate you showing them Georgia. So thanks for the walkthrough.
Yeah.
Actually, if you could stop sharing your screen now, that would be great. There we go. Sweet.
Awesome.
Yeah, so that's pretty much it for from us for now. If anyone has any questions about the Google Sheet or the process, you know, once again, feel free to chime in. And
yeah, feel free to start video or unmute yourselves, or you can ask a question via the chat. You know, this is sort of the initial effort to get some things mapped using the power of the community here. So as things go forward, if people continue to be involved, we can do some more detailed mapping via the remote mapping. But right now we're focused on the buildings and the roads in those villages that we have on the spreadsheet. So we do have a question. Do you always recommend ticking have someone review? It's not necessary as long as you are making simple edits in the satellite imagery, things that are very obvious, like the buildings and the roads. They don't need to be reviewed. So you can just save the changes.
Yeah. Another question.
Can I just add one thing on that? Just add good
Yeah.
comments and good tags. So when you submit your edits, then people will check them out and will improve whatever they need to improve if there is a need, or they can basically check it out.
Do you recommend that people have someone check their edits, Alessandro, or does it depend on your projects how complicated it is?
We don't really do that. As I said,
Yeah.
like as long as we have good in the comments, we can always go back and check, and that is also mitigated by if you use the task manager, as you know, that you need to validate. So anyway, you will look over things. So it really depends on what kind of work you're doing.
Yeah.
So yeah, we got another question. And once again, guys, do feel free to turn on your video and say hi if you like. Someone wants to know, which Android app do you deem to be the most convenient for editing OpenStreetMap? Alessandro, maybe you have some thoughts on that? Android apps? Anyone else?
Simon, correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't think you can or is not easily to edit and stuff using the Android app.
Okay.
Yeah, I think that the web editor is the easiest
With
that we can do right now, especially for the remote mapping.
And exactly, so there's this Fuji app that you can use.
Yeah, okay. We didn't know about that.
Hi, this is Ollie who's asking the question. Hi. And my idea asking this question is actually I wouldn't take a computer with a browser with me to the field, so I'd like to do it on the phone directly when I'm there. Then the impression is fresh.
Yeah, so if I
I think we lost you, Alessandro.
I think it was me. Oh no.
can try to answer like that. Is it okay now?
Now you're back.
Sort of.
Now you're gone again.
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Now we can
an app.
Feel free to also
on your phone, and then afterwards you can use them on your computer to then upload it to actually OSM, and that will be what we do, for example, with TCT mapping. But if you have small additions to do on the map, there are many other apps that you can, for example, I don't know, just add a point. There is a drinking fountain. That's much easier to just do and just press a button and just say, okay, there is a spring here, and that's it. So there are, again, many options for doing these things, again, depending on what are you trying to achieve.
So I would just like to add, there are a lot of features that we can do with the remote mapping, and we will need help with them in the future. So right now, we're just focused on these villages, the buildings in the villages and the roads at this time. And you know, as we go forward this summer, if we have a community of interested people, we can do more, and we can keep in touch with people. The reason we made the spreadsheet is so that you can choose which village you're working on and write your name next to it and mark it as yellow, so that, you know, you have it highlighted as yellow for a few days while you do the buildings, and then nobody else is gonna interfere with that process. And then when you're done, you can mark it green. So that's how we're dividing up the work. There are other ways to divide up the work. There are a lot of really cool things that people do using task managers to divide up work to get it really quickly done. And with Alessandro and Simon's expertise, we can set those kinds of things up for Georgia, which they have set up for Armenia. But like at this time, we're just using the spreadsheet. We're keeping it simple. If you can help us with the buildings and the roads, that'll be a huge amount of work. So we wanted to keep it simple at this point in time, but clearly there's a lot of opportunities for later in the summer. Also, somebody asked how long it takes to update. You'll see it on OpenStreetMap within an hour or so. It loads different layers at different intervals, so you might not see it in certain views, but it's pretty quick, like within an hour or so. As far as apps go, a lot of the apps that draw the base map from OpenStreetMap update on a longer time period. So maybe it'll take a few weeks for it to show up in the apps, but it does happen at regular intervals. Anybody can feel free to chime in on those with more details, but
Great. We had another question asking Vacho if he would mind reviewing the part where he moved from the spreadsheet to the map. So I think searching villages is what Salman is asking about.
Yeah, searching the villages. Also, Vacho, if you can show the different, or I can actually do it. I mean, if Vacho, if you're not there.
Yeah, you can go ahead, Paul.
Okay. So just to go, back to OpenStreetMap. So when you're looking at the OpenStreetMap, you're not going to see the satellite imagery. Someone was asking about that. So you have to go into the edit mode in order to see the satellite imagery. That's when you'll see the base layers that we're using. So we go into edit mode. And my internet connection is slow. And then we have to zoom in to a certain level in order to be able to edit. But we can search any village. So if you take a village off of that spreadsheet, so I'm going to look at the spreadsheet here. I'm going to say I want to work on Pona. So I'm going to mark it as yellow here, highlight it as yellow. Say that I'm working on Pona. I put Pablo Sigo because that's my name here in OpenStreetMap, not my actual name. So then I go back and I search for Pona. I wonder if it's called Pona. So this, as you can see, there's two different Ponas. So that's why we have the regions here. This is in Kharagauli. So I'm choosing Pona in Kharagauli. And then when I go to Pona, I can see that none of these buildings are mapped. So then that's when I get started with the area tool, marking the outlines of these buildings.
I think, just to jump in real quick, that also gets to a question Laura just asked, which is there a chance there might be multiple villages with the same name when we search? And
yes.
Definitely yes, but unlikely in different regions. So would recommend checking the region when it pulls up.
Yes, check the regions. We have the regions there just as a reference. They're marked in gray, so you don't have to worry about searching those names to map them, because those are the municipalities and the regions. So if it's in gray, don't worry about that. Once again, there's a lot of ways we can make this all, more complex, but we're trying to just get folks involved and show you the power of OpenStreetMap. And if everybody does a village, we'll make a lot of progress over the next few days. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen here if anybody has another question.
Awesome. What do we have?
There are also tremendous resources online for anybody who's interested in getting better at OpenStreetMap. There's a whole wiki, there's a whole community of people giving advice. There's a beginner's guide to OpenStreetMap in the help section of the editor. So if you click on that question mark in the editor again, there's a whole help section. Yeah.
I had a question from Chris Sherrington, who I'm not totally sure what you mean here, asking whether we divide areas up amongst each other or just start anywhere. Chris, if you want to hop on with voice, do you mean within the spreadsheet or within villages? Sorry, type. Oh, okay. Okay, you're good. Cool. Awesome. We also had a great suggestion from Jacob to also add a date when you add your name to the villages you're working on, just so we have a sense of how long things are going. So feel free to do that. And question from Meinrads: can you see how old the satellite images are? Paul, do you know anything about that, or Ale? You're on mute though, Paul.
I believe that you can see the copyright for the satellite imagery. You can also share. You can switch satellite imagery. That was something I was going to show before on the screen share. If I go here to the layers, there's different satellite imagery. So this is Bing imagery, and it says down here copyright 2020, Microsoft Corporation. So if I switch to Maxar, for example, I'm going to get some slightly different imagery, which may be older. So Bing is generally pretty good for Georgia, so that's what we're using. But you can switch between these satellite imageries and check the copyright for the image. And if you're looking at a really grainy photo, it can help to switch between. Or some of them will be in winter and some of them will be in summer, so that can also help to switch back and forth.
Awesome.
The copyright doesn't actually say anything about the time the image was taken.
Okay.
I'm not really sure how to find out on the online editor because we use a different editor. But I know Bing does supply kind of a rough estimate of when the images were taken because they're taken from many different images and stitched together. So sometimes it'll say it's, I don't know, from 2005 to 2010 or something like that. But I'm not sure how to find that out on the online editor. You can find it in the different editor.
Gotcha. Okay.
We have done some fun things in the past. You can do custom aerial imagery, if you have the resources to like do drone imagery and stuff like that. So, if you're trying to do something super accurate and updated, that's another possibility that people use, if they have the resources.
You end up having funny stories if you do that.
Yeah. We had another question from Muriel asking about whether it's possible to transfer data from ArcMap to OpenStreetMap. Simon, do you have any thoughts?
I didn't get the question.
Whether it's possible to transfer data from ArcMap to OpenStreetMap?
It is possible, but not so easy. I'm not sure what kind of data from ArcMap they mean. So vector data or?
Not sure either. Muriel, feel free to elaborate if you like. Vector, okay.
It's pretty tricky. So it is possible. There's also people specialized in doing that who get lots of vector data from a municipality or some company that kind of donates this data, and then they have to convert it into OSM. It's a little tricky, especially when there's data that's already there. It's very difficult to kind of get it into it. So it's a job for specialists, but it is possible.
Okay, thank you. Super interesting. All right, well, maybe as a kind of wrap-up question, I know some people earlier were really keen to hear a little bit more about the mapping workshops that you and Alessandro led in Armenia last year. Maybe would you care to share a little bit about that? Some inspiration for all of our new mappers.
Okay, so maybe I'll keep the video off this time and the delay will be less. I hope you can hear me fine now.
Yeah, it's good. Thank you.
So basically we went through what started basically from what we did today with groups of more or less, say 10 to 20 so students around Armenia and Artsakh-Karabakh area. It was part of our crowdfunding campaign. Like we offered the chance for people to back us up, and as a reward, we were going to go and teach people how to contribute around Armenia because, of course, we needed hands as well to produce our maps. And So what we did basically an extended version of what we just introduced tonight. And we went more into details of all those tools and all the different kind of options for the workflow that we can go through. We exposed them to from general concept to what is a map in general, and how you start thinking about things that you take for granted, and start unpacking those concepts, and then slowly get into get them to develop cool maps of their own. Because one thing that of course goes beyond what we do for trail mapping is that one of the power of OpenStreetMap is that you can map basically whatever you want. And it came up into the workshops. They actually wanted to map stuff that OSM didn't have a record for, like boarding school, that we couldn't find. So you can propose tags that you want to add to OpenStreetMap, or there is weird things like we found out. There are maps that highlights all the edible plants available around your neighborhood, so you can go and pick up your food and forage in cities that crazy about this in Germany. The whole workflow from remote mapping.
We're losing you, Ali.
To actually produce a map, and it was about 2 weeks.
All right, unfortunately, we lost you right after you started talking about a map of edible food around a city, which sounds amazing to me, very useful. But
yeah, it's just to show the power and the different kind of things that you can do. And I was just saying that the idea was to expose the students in the space of 2 weeks to the general concept, but then also show them the workflow from doing the field mapping and the remote mapping all the way to produce printed maps, which they all did. And it was really fun. And some of those guys, as I said before, they're still working with us.
Yeah, that's fantastic. Awesome. Thank you so much for sharing. And before I linked a blog post that was on Cardassian's webpage that had some nice photos and stories from that, if anyone is interested in learning more. Sounded like a really cool project. So yeah, that sounds like, we've pretty much covered questions. If you have any more, feel free to reach out to us. We're happy to answer any more over email. And just once again, thank you so much for being here and for being willing to contribute your time to this project.